Want to know the secret sauce to skyrocketing your group practice? Whether you're already a group practice owner or aspire to be one, the Group Practice Boss Conference in beautiful Traverse City, Michigan on May 6th and 7th, 2025 is designed just for you. This isn't your typical conference. Expect TEDx-style talks that are short, focused, and packed with actionable insights. But we believe the real magic happens when you connect with others in the field. So we've built in plenty of time for networking and deep conversations. You'll leave not just with a clear plan for success, but also with new friends and a support system that will help you along the way. Don't miss out. Reserve your spot today at practiceofthepractice.com/conference. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/conference. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1086. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I am so excited to have you here listening with me today. We help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. We cover things that are business oriented. We cover things that are mental health oriented. We have researchers on, we have practitioners on, we have people that have their own stories and their own journeys. Before we dive into today's guest, though, please mark your calendars for the Group Practice Boss Conference, May 6th and 7th of 2025. Tickets go on sale November 4th publicly, so you're going to want to go over to practiceofthepractice.com/conference. This is going to be an amazing conference for private practitioners that are in group practice, but then also those that are aspiring group practitioners as well. It's going to be TED Talk style, so shorter talks with lots of time to really dig into relationships, connections. To me, that's the best part of a conference, is getting to know people. In spring in Northern Michigan, this part of the United States, Good Morning America, voted the most beautiful part of the U.S. Now, I don't fully buy that. I do live here, but I've been to Hawaii. I've been to lots of other beautiful places in the U.S. It's beautiful here, but I probably shouldn't poo-poo my sales pitch on the Group Practice Boss Conference. But I want you to come here and hang out. We're going to have some pre-con things. We're going to have some after-conference things. But even more so, you're going to meet people that hopefully become friends for life and people you can lean on when your practice gets tough. So again, practiceofthepractice.com/conference. That's right around the corner. That tickets start going on sale. We only are selling 120 total. And our speakers are getting some free tickets. We've got our consulting clients getting some free tickets. And so tickets are going to go on sale for the Group Practice Boss members ahead of time. So we're probably only going to have about 50 or 60 tickets that are open to the public. So make sure you grab those. Look at your calendar. Come to Traverse City. Let's hang out. So really excited about that. But I can't wait to have today's guests on. Brian Zhang. For over 10 years, he taught over 1,000 students how to play guitar. He also has major depression, and he is named the mental musician. And after shutting down his music school in 2023, he ventured down the rabbit hole of writing online about his mental health journey to help musicians build three things: resilience, courage, and confidence. Brian, welcome to the Practice podcast.
Hey, Joe, it's good to talk to you. Any chance to talk about mental health is wonderful, and that beautiful introduction. Well, I gave it to you, so no, thanks for making it sound better than what I sent to you.
Yeah, all good. Well, I've played guitar since high school and just tinkered around with it. Was in bands in college, and now I play a little bit of piano more to impress my daughters with songs from Disney than anything. But tell me about being a musician. I want to get into your mental health journey, but I want to start with tell me about you being a musician, teaching over 1,000 people guitar. Just how did that journey start for you?
Yeah, it started. Well, I probably was playing guitar in my mother's womb. That's probably my earliest memory. No, I've been playing guitar ever since I was 3 or 4. I have photos of when I was a toddler, and I was always holding guitar. I think the band that really got me going was the Wiggles here in Australia. I think they've made waves in America, and I always wanted to play the guitar with Murray. So, started playing the guitar, just air guitar, watching TV, eventually my auntie from Vietnam, she bought me a guitar, and then my mum bought me one. Started having some lessons when I was 7 years old, and yeah, in the beginning I enjoyed playing guitar. It wasn't really something that I thought about doing for a career. It's just something that I enjoyed doing, and eventually, finishing high school, it was the natural progression for me. I was lucky enough to work out, oh, this is something I could do for a living. I think I was lucky that I grew up in an era where YouTube, social media was starting to boom. This was around 2010, 2011. So yeah, that's the basic story there, and I'm glad that it's worked out okay. 20 years later.
Mm. Now, how did you decide to start a school? So, it's one thing to be playing guitar, to be good at guitar, to, maybe gig out, things like that. I think a lot of musicians don't understand how to do the business side of it to then, do a guitar school. So, like, where did that switch click for you, and what did that look like when you started building the guitar school?
Yeah, it started in 2014. That was when I got my first guitar student. And in all honesty, the only reason why I started teaching guitar was because I got rejected from a lot of supermarket and retail shop jobs. I don't know how you get rejected by that. So, yeah, I was 17 at the time, started looking for jobs, and got rejected from all these retail shops. So I thought, okay, what can I do? I can play guitar. Let's try and teach it. So, but the teaching side of things, that didn't really click until maybe 2 or 3 years after high school. I decided, you know what, I'm going to teach a few more students rather than going straight into university or college. Eventually got to a point where I had enough students to call it a business, and it sort of just kept growing and growing and growing. I realized, oh, this could turn into a one man school. So for 8 years, I was teaching just myself. I'd teach about 35 students a week, sometimes 40. And in 2022, that's when I opened up my first music school. So it was a little bit accidental in the beginning, but it's become something that I've really cared about. It was a passion that it grew. It didn't happen naturally in the beginning. I always enjoyed playing guitar and music, but teaching never came naturally to me. I had to learn that skill. So yeah, it was quite fascinating. I think sometimes with musicians that I know, teaching somewhat just happens. It can happen accidentally, and luckily for me, it ended up being something I really cared about, and it's grown into uh, my livelihood now.
And what did that look like? Was it like e-courses? Was it live teaching? Was it live one-on-one virtually? Like what did it actually look like?
Yeah, one on one. I started teaching my next door neighbors essentially, and a couple of school friends. And I was the guitar guy at school, so I'd teach a couple of friends at school, and then I would put out. This was back in 2013, 14, 15. So uh, I would put out free ads on the internet. I'd go to my local music school, and I'd walk across the street, see if I can find anyone to teach. Eventually, when I got my driver's license, I'd start driving around all around Sydney. So for the first 8 years, and most of the time, it's been in person, one on one. I would go to someone's house after school. It'd be great because I'd always get a different smell. I'd smell what they were cooking for dinner. It was always very hard to concentrate during those lessons. If it was in the evening, I'd smell their dinner, and I'd get distracted. So, yeah, for between 2015 to 2020, it was predominantly in person. And then when COVID happened, I started taking some online lessons. Some people overseas, interstate here in Australia. So, and when the school happened, in 2022 became a mix of one-on-one and group lessons as well.
Hmm. Now you've been public about kind of your depression and dealing with that, and helping other musicians and artists with that. Tell me, what does that look like? Was that something that you've dealt with your entire life? Did it start recently? Is it something you're noticing and now reflecting back and saying, "Oh man, like this was there all along"? Like, what does your journey with depression look like?
Yeah, Joe. Well, how long do we have? We got 20 minutes. So, uh, no, it, to be honest, it wasn't something that I think I knew I always had it. It's easy for me now to say I'm 26 now, and I can say, yeah, when I was 16, I had it. I wasn't officially diagnosed until I was 17. But the signs were there when I was 17 and 18. I started withdrawing myself from classmates in my last year of high school. I wasn't sleeping well. My mood would drop as well. So music was my escape and a way for me just to get away from the stresses of life. Teaching was a way for me to belong, to feel like I was doing something useful, and it was a good way. It was a good coping mechanism. It made me feel whole, like I was making an impact. Eventually, it got to a point where I was only relying on that. So, uh, you know, throughout the last 5 years, especially, I've tried to have these methods and different ways to make sure that I don't rely on one or two different ways. And if I find myself heading into the red zone or into a really really dark place, because I know what that feels like, I'll try to pull myself back. You know, develop these mental skills over the last few years that have helped me a little bit, and it's still tricky. It's not easy, and I'm never 100% anymore. But I try to tell myself, look, if I can get through a day and get through it feeling 70% okay, then that's an okay day. And it has gotten worse over the years. This year it's been okay. I've managed it. It's probably gotten worse this year, but as I get older, I do find ways to manage it and live with it in a way.
Hmm.
Hope that answers the question okay.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when did you name it depression? Because I think sometimes it can be really freeing when you realize that something you're dealing with is something that other people deal with, that you're not just, alone in the world. That, when did you actually name it depression? Was it a therapist? Was it a family member? Like, how did that come about?
If I could, my earliest memory with it would be in my last year of high school. So this was 2014 and 15. The first time I heard depression in a real life sense was when I heard it from my mother. And my mother has depression as well. She's been sick for most of my life. And her doctor, her counselor, when one day she pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you, Brian. Just want to see how you're doing because Mum's sick, and I want to let you know that Mum has major depression along with all other illnesses as well." And I knew that this word depression existed. I think in 2014, there was still the stigma or misunderstanding. Uh, you know, we would talk about the Great Depression, and I was doing history in school as well. So I thought, has this got anything to do with the Great Depression, or is this a different thing? It's not the Great Depression, right? So, and she explained it to me in a very medical way, explaining what it is. It's a chemical imbalance. It's a prolonged period of mood. So, from that sense, I knew, okay, I understand what it is now. Let me go on Google. So I'm going on WebMD, understanding it. Okay, I understand it now on a logical, medical, scientific level. Then when I asked my best friend's dad, who he's been a teacher for his whole life and he's worked in personal health and development, when I asked him, is depression hereditary? And he said, it's very likely. There's evidence to show it's hereditary. That was probably the first time I thought I might have it, because I have a lot of the same symptoms my mum has. So I go see my school counselor, and then she ticks all the boxes. I do one of those surveys, and I score very highly. I did very well. One of the only exams that year I did well in that year in school, and and then she referred me to my psychologist, and within about 4 minutes, probably 4 seconds actually, if I look back, my psychologist said, "Yep, you got major depression, and you also tick the boxes for general anxiety as well. And yep, let's start working on helping you getting back to full health, or at least managing this as you get a bit older."
Mm. Now, I think that, we have all these therapists that are listening. What do you think would have been helpful before your diagnosis, that therapists could have been doing in your community regarding awareness around depression?
That's I think personally for me, if there was a little bit more of I would say a family or community aspect to it. So now in 2024, really, let's say in the last 5 years, particularly since COVID, every couple of weeks I'll see a fundraiser on the streets in my local area or even on social media, but particularly in my local area where there'll be something to do with raising awareness for mental health. And it could be a fun run, it could be a school event, a carnival, something. And I'll hear someone talk about it and they'll be raising awareness, there'll be talks about it. And a lot of therapists, these, I guess, Gen Z or millennial therapists, younger therapists, will be out on the street talking, giving these talks. So it's tough for me to say because I think 10 years ago, there was, with the internet and social media really starting to grow, the stigma was still there. That community pub test level where you could just go to someone and say, "Hey, I'm not doing well," and actually have a conversation where you can say, "I have depression" or I have anxiety and so on. That wasn't there 10 years ago. So on one hand, yeah, I wish that level was there where on the community level, on the street, people can talk about it. There'd be events. At the same time, I know that I'm very lucky to grow up in an era where we can talk about it now. So it's a double edged sword. I used to be angry about it. I used to get annoyed and think, my therapist and my psychologist in the first couple of years of me going to therapy. She's been lovely. I've had the same one for 8 years, but a lot of what she was giving me was just general terms. So she was really just explaining what depression was to me, what major depression was, what suicide is, why people suicide. And I don't, when I asked her over the years, like, what she could have done better, she would tell me, yeah, the level of education and the level of resource wasn't as deep as it is now 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was just the textbook definition. Now there's more of an emotional understanding to it. So, yeah, it would have been nice to have had that 10 years ago, but I'm still young and I'm grateful that I can now access all these resources and share that with my younger students. And in the future, I'll have kids in the next 10 years or so, maybe. And, hopefully there'll be a few more resources and it'll be a lot easier to access then.
Yeah. Now, you, before we started recording, were talking about how you had some times of suicidal ideation. Um, Are you up for chatting about that? And I would love to hear what was helpful during that time uh, to help you work on that, to deal with that, to get help around that.
Yeah, this was around this time last year, actually, or throughout 2023. In all honesty, Joe, thinking about suicide or taking my own life, that has been a thought that's lingered for quite a while, but it really came, came to the fore last year. And what happened, I guess what helped me get through it was first knowing that I've somehow gotten through 10 years of major depression, and it's taken 10 years for me to start thinking about, okay, maybe I'm going to give up. So I had to really refrain and remind myself, this is not my first year of depression. I'm not early in my journey. I've gone through this for 10 years. I have mates and friends who have dealt with it for much longer than me, so I can talk to them. Of course, now there's a lot more information on the internet. There's also figures and well-known people and my favorite idols, athletes, celebrities who talk about it more openly, musicians as well. So hearing them, having that parasocial relationship with them is nice. So, but I just had to remind myself of, hey, I still have a lot of reasons to live. Funnily enough, I actually read the book Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig and his book The Midnight Library. So during this period,
Oh, that's such a good book. I read that last summer.
oh, awesome! Have you read all his? What was the other one he did? Notes on an Anxious Plan. Have you read that one too? I
So
haven't
I
read that
read
one.
Midnight Library, and then I think there's one called Dead Fathers Club or something like that. I think I've read his fiction, but I haven't read his other ones.
Reasons to Stay Alive. That one it's sort of like his memoir and sort of I don't think it would be self help, although it does get put into the self help section of bookstores here in Australia at least. But reading that book, hearing how Matt went through this period 20 years ago where for the first 25 years of life, it was pretty much, this is it. I can't get through this. And he's in his mid 40s and he's sold, he's written so many books now. So knowing that there are real people out there who have gotten through this, survived, they may not be at their best and happy, but they still find a way. So that was one of the first things. And then I just had to remind myself that all in all, I need to work out what is most important to me in my life. Up until last year, really the only thing that drove me was work and teaching music. As much as I loved it and cared about it, my self-worth was tied to my work and tied to the guitar. I wrote a piece early in the year saying the title was something like, when I had my guitar or when I was in the music room, I felt like I belonged in this world. And the moment that the guitar was put down, it was like I was putting down my value as a person, and I would shut down and become a shadow or something like that. And, I had to really find a way to belong in this world away from music. I love music, I love teaching, but that's just a part of me. So I was writing, this was July last year, I was writing my journal and I was writing a hypothetical suicide note or goodbye note. So I thought, how many people I'm going to say goodbye to? So firstly, my friends, and they're my best friends, my students, their parents for supporting me, my parents, my girlfriend. And then eventually, as I wrote it, I started writing what I was looking forward to doing with them in the future. So the first half of this letter was, thank you for being such a great student. I remember back in 2017 when you did your first performance, for example. And then afterwards, I write, I'm looking forward to your next performance. I didn't realize this until about the 10th page, where I started writing with my, when I was addressing it to my friends, I'm looking forward to seeing you get married. And then I'd write about my girlfriend and say, I'm looking forward to starting a family with you and traveling with you a bit more, seeing your parents grow old and all that. So what started out as a suicide note essentially became this romantic love letter to the future with my friends and family. And on the top of that list was my friends and family. It's a really, I know it's cliche but it really did help me find a way to realize, these are the reasons for me to live. There were also other things like I wanted to make sure I perfected and learn how to make good coffee latte art as well. Big on coffee in Australia, so that's very important. Big sign of your status in Australia if you can make good coffee art. Your self-worth as a human is tied to that. So, and there are other things like running. I enjoy running, exercising. That's helped me continue going, and I get competitive with myself. So I wanted to beat my personal 5-kilometer best. So all these trivial things that just made me think, I still have some reasons to live. I took inspiration from Matt Haig's book, so I highly recommend that book. It's a quick read and it's so sweet. It's really heartwarming.
It's never too early to start thinking about tax season. That's why I've partnered with my friends over at Herd. Herd serves as the financial back office built specifically for therapists in private practice. They're an all-in-one financial solution that combines software with human support to handle bookkeeping, taxes, payroll, and more. Regardless of whether you're a seasoned clinician or in your first year of your practice, Herd will identify growth areas and streamline best financial practices for your business. When you sign up with Herd, you'll connect your bank accounts so your transactions will be automatically pulled in and categorized. My favorite thing about Herd is their allocation guide, which helps you decide how much to pay yourself each month and how much to set aside for taxes. You'll also receive financial insights such as profit and loss statements and monthly reports. You can say goodbye to poring over spreadsheets and guessing your tax deductions or quarterly payments. Focus on your clients, and Herd will take care of the rest. Sign up for a free consultation today at joinherd.com/Joe and get 1 month free with promo code Joe. Again, that's joinherd.com/Joe. Now, you specifically write to musicians, artists, creatives. That's kind of how a lot of your work is. What have you found in regards to the work you do with them? And so you have kind of three main things you focus on: resilience, courage, and confidence.
Mhm.
Um, I guess let's just start with why those three.
Yeah, those for me are the three pillars of what they set the foundation, and it's really the heartbeat of what it means to be a musician and to really one survive in the music industry and to thrive. Because in the music industry or any art industry, really, the resilience. For example, you're gonna get a lot of criticism. You're gonna get a lot of knockbacks. You're gonna get rejected more times than successful times. So having that thick skin, that mental strength to overcome that, understand that, especially early on in your journey, every time you get rejected, it's a chance for you to learn and get better. It will hurt in the beginning, and the one thing I try to help other musicians understand is it's okay to feel that way. I felt that way when I lost my first student, for example, or if I didn't get that gig, or if I did that music competition, I came seventh instead of sixth or something like that. And to be able to bounce back and continue on. There's here in Australia there's a saying where we'll say you got to dig in and get through to T. Just dig in and get through to T. So that's the first one. With confidence, it's an interesting one with confidence because we talk about that a lot in the education field with the young children. For me personally, I've realized confidence is a skill that you can develop. It's not something that you can just feel. I know that a lot of people say, "Oh, you can feel confident," but I've reframed it in a way where you can build confidence and it becomes a skill. So, if you work on your craft, for example, so if you're working on a performance and you got this piece that you want to perform for your friends or the big stage, you practice your song, and the more you practice, the better you get, and the more you trust your skills. And because you trust your skills, because you can play that song well, that's when you feel confident. And courage, well, it takes a special type of person really to want to become a musician because the success rate, I think, is less than 10%. And out of those 10% of musicians worldwide, or at least here in Australia, who have success, who are able to make money, live off their music, really only 0.5% are able to do it for more than 10 years. It's a visceral industry, so it does take a lot of courage for someone to uh, pursue being a professional musician, even being a music teacher. Being a music teacher is somewhat the lowest rank of being a teacher. Not necessarily in terms of respect. It's just we get paid the least, at least here in Australia, compared to maybe an English teacher. So that's those are the three pillars, and if you can build that, I believe if you can build that as your foundation of your mindset, and always remind yourself of those three things, those skills that you've developed, then it makes it a little bit simpler to attack all the other issues that come with it, the objective things and the black and white things like business, money, finances, contracts, marketing, all those sorts of things.
Hmm. Now, I know some therapists might be listening, and you've talked about having a therapist. We haven't talked about psychiatric medication. We haven't talked about some of those things. It sounds like a lot of life habits have been helpful for you. Where do you think, for most people, and again, you're not a doctor, you're not a therapist, you're speaking as a person that is speaking from your own perspective. So I want to just make sure people know we're not giving medical advice for people's unique situation, but but for you, like, where does psychiatric medication fit into the equation in regards to helping live a fulfilling life while having depression?
Mm. Yeah, I went on medication, antidepressants, June last year, June 2023. I put it off for a long time. I take a double dose so 50 milligrams every night, and I've been doing that for the last, let's say, 400 days, a year and a half. So to me, I I don't know if it's actually done anything for me. Uh, and I know that I have a very close friend, or a very good friend, who's taken it pretty much all his life. He's 34 now, 35. He's taken it since he was 17. And, when I talk to him about it, he says whether or not it actually does something for him, it just makes him feel like he can continue on. Uh, and there is something there that he can sort of rely on. So, uh, the medication I take is fairly moderate. It's not the strongest one. Uh, it does help me calm down at night, though. So nowadays, I know there are specific types of antidepressants and medications that can have specific effects. My doctors told me that the ones I take help me sleep better. That's been a big problem for me. There are other ones that really do affect and change your mood or the hormonal balance in your brain. So that helps you get through a day. So if you take that during the afternoon or in the morning, that will take effect more. So I know there's a lot of confusion with it still, even though medication has been there for a long time. The one thing I guess I will say is there is a lot of information out there, and if doctors, my doctor, she was incredible. When we spent about 2 weeks, and I think we had 4 or 5 sessions in those 2 to 3 weeks, where she just laid out and told me every single detail and gave me every single testimonial, and also gave me every negative review of every medication that was available. And she was so thorough. It made me think, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? I wanted to try to keep everything quote unquote natural. I didn't want to, I wanted medication to be a last resort. But she was very honest, and she said, look, this will not make you happy. This is not a happy pill. It may not actually do anything because I've put it off for 10 years, and my body might reject it because I've rejected all this for 10 years. But it could actually just help you get up in the morning. And if that's your only goal, just to get up in the morning, then this could be the thing that could help you get up in the morning and get through a day. So it's helped me a little bit, I guess, on an emotional sense. Physically, I'm not too sure if it's actually done anything. So, but I would suggest if friends come to me and ask about it, or young students, I say, look, just make sure your doctor's a good one. If she has time or he has time over 1 or 2 weeks, just talk and talk and talk about it. There's enough information out there, and the interpretations are a lot more accurate now than they were 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, as someone that talks about your own mental health journey, we hear a lot of times in social media, be vulnerable, like let the world in. And a lot of therapists, I think, rightfully are cautious around that. But how do you personally decide what you're going to write about and what you're not going to write about?
Yeah, it's a nice question, Joe. And it's one of the things I thought about when I started writing, and even just talking about it, because I always say this before I write or whenever I give advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm only talking about my personal journey, and the skills or methods that I've taken are very specific to how I've dealt with depression. It can be very similar to someone else, and I believe in this world we're all interconnected in some way, and we all live in the same planet, and if we live in the same city or country, we're bound to have similar experiences in some way, shape, or form. That being said, go talk to a professional first. But so in short, I just talk about my personal journey and the lessons I've learned. Whenever I do give advice, I try to I reframe it and say, look, I don't want to give advice. I'm going to give you reminders that might help you, because advice can maybe be a little bit too absolute. And I know there's a lot of information out there on social media that is very helpful. I'll say that, but because when you look on social media, 9 times out of 10, it is just someone's personal journey. It's not someone talking about an objective study or science-based research, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, so I'm a single dad. I have 85% custody of my daughters, and there's all
Uh,
sorts of things that I could speak about in regards to that. But for me, it's around my kids. What do I want out there in the world that their friends' parents, like what can I feel good about saying about my situation that is going to maybe outlive the moment that I'm speaking about it. To me, being vulnerable in my situation just to get some more clicks or to get some more listens at potentially the damage of my daughters or my relationship with them, to me is why I've been more hesitant about really digging into kind of all the things that happen. But I think that however people that are listening are thinking through how much to share, I do think it's smart to be cautious, and it is smart to say, like, what can I share? And so, whether it's what names, faces, places that we are, those are all things to think through in addition as we talk about this. Well, Brian, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
uh, a lot of things, but no. Look, every mental health therapist, psychologist, practitioner, just thank you for all the work you've done, especially in the last 5 years. COVID is still, we're still feeling the effects of COVID. We're 4 years on, but the effects are going to linger on for a couple more years and probably longer than that. We are, we are living in a mental health crisis, I guess. And I had a friend of mine say that despite how rich the world is at the moment, how wealthy the economy is in all parts of the world, particularly in the Western world, we've never been lonelier. And you have these people who are dedicating their lives to really essentially keep people alive. And, uh, as much as there is misinformation or there can be, malpractice and controversy on that front, every doctor that I've known in my life who's helped me in my life and my friends, my family, they are doing the absolute best they can. Most of the time, they don't even have all the answers, given how uh, grey mental health is, but they're still trying their best to have an answer. So, I'm sure if people in the general public knew that, as tough as it is to realize all doctors, mental health therapists in the mental health field, they're doing their absolute best. It's only going to get better if these mental health therapists, psychologists stay in a job. With social media, it's very easy to write a bad review and say this therapist is not good for X, Y, Z reasons. But to understand that they are doing their best and they're trying to research, educate, and learn more, it's going to get better in 10 years, in 15 years. There's a lot of organizations here in Australia where their mission, their life mission, is to live in a world where there's zero suicide. I honestly don't believe that's going to happen in my lifetime, maybe my children's lifetime, but I'd like to know that I can grow up in a world, grow old in a world where it can get as close to zero as we can. And the mental health therapists and those doctors in this field, they are the reason that we could reach zero suicide in this world. They will be the reason. So, just give them a bit more credit. Say thank you for all the work they do. I don't think they get enough credit. They definitely don't.
Mm. So awesome. Brian, if people want to follow your work, if they want to recommend it to some of their clients, where should we send them?
Yeah, all the socials. I'm on Instagram, Threads. I write most of my stuff on LinkedIn, and I have a newsletter. It's called the Mental Musician Newsletter. It's free at the moment, so the more you love for people to subscribe. I release a weekly newsletter about a personal story. Even though it is geared towards musicians, I think anyone who's a creative person in the business field, entrepreneur, can read it, and hopefully they'll take something out of it. I still on YouTube. I haven't released music on YouTube for a long time, but hopefully I'll do that. And I still have MySpace as well. So if people use MySpace and MSN, all the old things, happy to do that. WhatsApp, all that sort of. So happy to connect with anyone, have a chat about mental health. If I can offer a little bit of help by just having a chat, then happy to do that.
Brian, thank you so much for being on the show today.
No, thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you sharing your little story about your daughter as well. Just quickly, I know now it is a little bit easier for men to talk about mental health. It's still tough though, so it is nice to have a conversation man to man like this. And hopefully, as the future rolls on, men are able to say this and not be judged about it. So I really appreciate you sharing your story as well.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
If you have a podcast, I want to encourage you to reach out to Brian and to have him on the show. He's such a great guest. He's newer to getting interviewed on podcasts, but I think that these messages of people that are talking directly to specific audiences, for them to partner with therapists together collaboratively, is such a beautiful, amazing thing. So if you have a podcast, I want to directly ask you to reach out to him on LinkedIn, schedule an interview, get him on your show. He's been nothing but delightful as a guest on my show. So if you'll do that for Brian, that would be incredible. Also, we could not do this show without our amazing sponsors. So Herd is our sponsor today. It is headed towards the end of the year, and it's never too late or early to start thinking about tax season. You really got to wrap this up before the end of the year. Get Herd in there. This is not a time to do DIY accounting. Don't get a self-help book around accounting and bookkeeping. We want your tax situation to be smooth, and some planning can make it almost painless. So if you want to go to my go-to referral for therapists that need bookkeeping, tax prep, payroll, and all that financial back-end stuff, go check out Herd. You can get a free consultation over at joinherd.com/Joe. You'll get the first month for free with promo code Joe at checkout. Again, that's joinherd, spelled HEARD.com/Joe. Make sure you talk to them before December 31st. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have an amazing day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.